The crystal wine flute exploded against the marble floor. Red liquid spreading across the white tiles like venom from a viper's bite. But that wasn't what shattered. The wine had been thrown in my face 3 seconds earlier, dripping from my hair, staining my silk blouse, burning my eyes with humiliation. Marcus Wellington, my father-in-law, stood at the head of his mahogany dining table with an empty glass in his hand and pure contempt burning in his eyes. Jennifer, my husband's younger sister, was laughing so hard she had to clutch the table edge for balance. "Nice one, Dad," she managed between gasps. "Maybe that'll teach her some manners." Pathetic woman. I felt my hands grip the chair beneath me. The entire Wellington family was watching. David, my husband, sat frozen beside me, his face unreadable. Catherine, his mother, had her hand over her mouth. I couldn't tell if it was shock or suppressed amusement. Nathan, his brother, stared at his plate as if he wanted to disappear into it. I stood up slowly. The room went quiet except for Jennifer's fading giggles. My fingers were steady despite the rage coursing through my veins. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I scrolled to a contact I never imagined I'd use at a family dinner and pressed call. "Stevens," I said when the line connected. "It's time. Execute everything we discussed." I hung up. The room was dead silent. Even Jennifer had stopped laughing. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They had no idea what I'd built or what I controlled or what I was about to take away from them. They were about to find out. My name is Elena Morrison. I'm 38. Until that Christmas Eve dinner, most people described me as quiet and reserved, a woman who worked in finance. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Reserved doesn't mean powerless. I had spent the last 12 years building something bigger than the Wellingtons could comprehend. I had spent the last 5 months preparing for this exact moment. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. The Wellingtons had never respected me. Not since the day I married David 7 years earlier. To them, I was the daughter-in-law without old money, without the right pedigree, without the proper bloodline. I didn't belong in their world of yacht clubs, charity auctions, and country estates. Marcus had made his fortune in commercial real estate during the 90s. He bought cheap, developed strategically, and rode the wave of economic growth. He considered himself self-made, which made his disdain for me especially ironic. Elena works in finance, he'd tell people at parties, putting extra emphasis on finance like it was a dirty word. He understood perfectly what I did. He just couldn't stand that I had become more successful than him without his help. I ran a private equity firm specializing in distressed assets, failing commercial properties, companies on the verge of bankruptcy, developments that couldn't secure financing. I bought them for pennies on the dollar, restructured them, and either turned them profitable or flipped them for substantial gains. My firm managed north of $250 million. My personal net worth was about $55 million. To the Wellingtons, I was still quiet Elena. David knew the truth. He had seen the bank statements, signed the tax returns, but he never corrected his family's assumptions. That should have been the first warning sign. The insults started small. Jokes about my wardrobe. Nathan bragging about his consulting firm in a way that implied my work was less legitimate. Catherine asking when we'd buy a bigger house, as if our 5-bedroom brownstone wasn't enough. Jennifer was the worst. She married Bradley Ashford, an investment banker who loved to talk about bonuses at dinner. Bradley's firm is projecting 35% returns this year, she'd say, looking at me. "What kind of returns does your little firm get, Elena?" I would smile, change the subject, let them think what they wanted. My firm had averaged 48% returns over the past decade. There was no point in correcting their narrative. The Wellingtons weren't interested in facts that contradicted their story. David had been different when we met. An architect at a progressive firm, creative and passionate. I fell in love with his vision, his curiosity, the way he could talk about sustainable design or economic policy with equal ease. Over time, though, he drifted back into his family's orbit. He began attending more family events. He started adopting their attitudes. He began to look at me the way they did. Stick around because you're not going to believe what I discovered about my own husband. 5 months before that Christmas Eve dinner, things changed. David took calls in other rooms. He joined networking groups that lasted until midnight. He started coming home with excuses that didn't quite add up. I'm not naive. I hired a private investigator named Sarah Chen. 2 weeks later, she sent me a 47-page report with photos, timestamps, and text message logs. David was having an affair with Rebecca Cole, a junior architect at his firm. 26 years old, blonde, everything I wasn't. The affair had been going on for 8 months. They'd been to hotels in 3 different cities. He'd told her he was planning to leave me. He'd told her I was controlling and cold. I sat in my office reading that report 3 times. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt something else entirely. A cold, crystalline clarity. I began to plan. I hired Stevens and Associates, the best divorce attorneys in the state. I documented everything. I opened separate accounts. I began quietly moving assets. I reviewed our prenuptial agreement, which David's family had insisted on. Ironic, considering what was about to happen. The prenup had a clause. Infidelity would affect asset division dramatically. David would walk away with almost nothing if I could prove the affair. And I could prove it. Extensively. But divorce wasn't enough. Not after 7 years of humiliation. Not after being treated like a charity case by people who should have been grateful I married into their declining dynasty. I started researching the Wellington family finances. What I found was fascinating. Marcus Wellington, the self-made real estate mogul, was leveraged to the breaking point. His properties were mortgaged, remortgaged, and cross-collateralized. He was one bad quarter away from collapse. Through a series of shell companies and intermediaries, I began acquiring his debt. Mortgage notes, commercial paper, credit lines. I bought them from banks eager to offload risk. Within 4 months, I owned the financial future of 3 Wellington properties, including their family estate. Nathan's consulting firm was bleeding clients. Bradley's investment fund was facing redemption requests. The Wellington empire was a house of cards. I had the matches. I was just waiting for the right moment. You won't believe what I did next. If you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon. Christmas Eve arrived. David insisted we attend the family dinner despite my objections. It's tradition, he said, as if tradition meant anything after what he'd done. I wore a white silk blouse and black pants, armor disguised as elegance. I brought my phone fully charged and my voice recorder ready. I had practiced this moment in my mind 100 times. The Wellington mansion was decorated like a magazine spread. White lights, crystal chandeliers, a dining table that could seat 20. Marcus presided at the head like a king holding court. Catherine, Nathan, Jennifer, Bradley, they were all there, dressed in their finest, ready to perform their annual ritual of superiority. Dinner started normally. Marcus talked about his latest development project. Nathan discussed his consulting contracts. Jennifer bragged about Bradley's year-end bonus. I smiled and nodded, playing the role I'd played for 7 years. Then Marcus turned to me. Elena, I hear your little firm had some challenges this year. Anything you want to share with the family? My firm had just closed its best year ever, but I knew where this was going. We did fine, Marcus. Thank you for asking. Fine, he repeated, smiling. Such ambition. David, you really should encourage your wife to aim higher. Bradley here just bought a vacation home in Aspen. Jennifer smirked. David said nothing. I felt the familiar burn of humiliation, but this time something else was there too. Anticipation. Actually, Marcus, I said quietly, I've been meaning to discuss something with you. Those properties on Riverside Drive, the ones you mortgaged last year. How are those performing? His face darkened. That's none of your business. Actually, it is my business. I own those notes. I bought them 3 months ago. The table went silent. Marcus's face turned red. What did you say? I own your debt, Marcus. And unless you can make the balloon payment due next month, I'll be foreclosing. He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You ungrateful. You come into this house, eat our food, And threaten me? I'm not threatening you, I said calmly. I'm informing you of the situation. He grabbed his champagne glass. For a moment, I thought he might throw it at the wall. Instead, he threw it at me. The liquid hit my face, cold and shocking. The glass shattered on the floor behind me. Jennifer laughed, that awful, delighted laugh. Maybe that'll teach her some manners. Pathetic woman. Beneath the champagne dripping down my face, I felt something click into place. They had given me exactly what I needed. This is where everything changes. I pulled out my phone and called Stevens, my attorney. Execute everything, I said calmly. Execute it all right now. Elena, what's happening? David asked, his voice cracking. I'm done, I said, looking at him directly. I'm filing for divorce. I'm filing assault charges against Marcus, and I'm freezing all marital assets. I showed them my phone. I had been recording the entire dinner. Marcus's insults, his violence, Jennifer's mockery, everything was documented. In our state, as a participant in the conversation, I could legally record without their knowledge. You can't do this, Marcus stammered. I already have. Stevens filed emergency motions 20 minutes ago. The court will freeze your assets pending the assault investigation. And those properties I mentioned? The foreclosure notices will be delivered tomorrow morning. I turned to David. I know about Rebecca. I've known for 5 months. I have photos, videos, text messages. Your affair voids our prenuptial agreement. You'll walk away with nothing. His face went white. Catherine gasped. Nathan stared at his plate. Jennifer's smirk had vanished. Nathan, I continued, your consulting firm is about to lose the Hendricks account. I made sure of that. Jennifer, you should ask Bradley about the redemption requests his fund has been getting. Those are my investors pulling out. Catherine, you might want to ask Marcus about the second mortgage on this house, the one I now own. The room erupted in panicked voices, but I wasn't finished. For 7 years, you treated me like I was nothing. You mocked my work, dismissed my success, and made me feel small in my own marriage. David stood by and let it happen. He joined you in looking down on me while he was sleeping with someone else. I walked toward the door, champagne still dripping from my hair. I built an empire while you all thought I was just quiet Elena. I acquired your debts, influenced your clients, and prepared for this moment while you laughed at me over expensive wine. At the threshold, I turned back one final time. Merry Christmas, everyone. I hope it's everything you deserve. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click. My phone was already ringing. Stevens confirming the filings had gone through. I had won before they even realized we were playing a game. You won't believe how this family fell apart. Stay tuned and make sure you're subscribed. The next 72 hours were chaos. Stevens moved with precision. David received divorce papers on Christmas morning. Marcus received foreclosure notices on December 26th. Nathan's firm was notified that the Hendricks account was leaving on December 27th. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. David called 23 times the first day. Nathan tried to negotiate. Catherine begged. I didn't answer any of them. The private investigator's report on David's affair went directly to the court. Under our state's laws, adultery would affect asset division significantly. David wouldn't walk away with half. He'd be lucky to get 10%. The foreclosure process took months, but the damage to Marcus's reputation was immediate. Lenders called notes due. Tenants looked for other spaces. Business partners distanced themselves. His empire began to crumble like a sandcastle at high tide. I felt no guilt, only a cold sense of justice finally being served. A week later, David called from his sister's house where he was apparently staying. Elena, please. We need to talk. I told him there was nothing left to discuss. I knew about Rebecca. I had evidence. I had protected myself. He asked for marriage counseling. I told him it wasn't about Rebecca. It was about who he had become. He had allowed his family to treat me like garbage. He had agreed with them. He had betrayed me while they mocked me. The divorce finalized 6 months later. David left with $75,000 and his car. Given my net worth, He'd expected more, much more. At the final hearing, he looked smaller, like the Wellington confidence had been stripped away. He tried to approach me afterward, but I walked past without a word. Marcus lost 2 of his 3 properties. The family estate survived, but barely, and only because Catherine had inheritance money she used to save it. The Wellington empire was reduced to a fraction of what it had been. Nathan's firm downsized. Jennifer's marriage to Bradley became strained as his funds struggled. The family that had seemed so powerful, so united in their contempt for me, was fractured and struggling. I moved into a new office overlooking the city skyline. My firm had grown to $320 million under management. I was negotiating bigger deals, making more strategic acquisitions. I was thriving. The best revenge, I learned, wasn't destroying them. The best revenge was building a life so good they couldn't touch it. The final part will blow your mind. Elena's story doesn't end with revenge. It ends with something better. 18 months after the wine incident, my assistant announced a visitor, Michael Chun, an architect specializing in sustainable urban development. He walked in with the quiet confidence of someone who knew his worth. We talked for 2 hours about architecture, community impact, and the intersection of profit and purpose. I committed $4 million to his nonprofit initiative. I asked him to dinner. He said yes. Michael was nothing like David. He had his own success, his own vision, his own life. He didn't need me to validate him, and I didn't need him to complete me. We were 2 whole people choosing to build something together. That was the difference. 2 years after the Wellington Christmas Eve dinner, Michael and I hosted a New Year's party at my penthouse. At midnight, he pulled me onto the balcony, overlooking the city. "I love that you know your worth," he said. "You don't need anyone to validate you." I realized then that the Wellingtons had taught me an important lesson, though not the one they intended. Their attempt to make me feel small had taught me to stop seeking approval from the wrong people. Their contempt had freed me to build something authentic. Marcus thought throwing champagne in my face would put me in my place. What he actually did was set me free. For that, I suppose I should thank him. The best part? 6 months ago, I acquired another one of Marcus's properties, not to foreclose, but to develop. I renovated it, turned it profitable, and donated half the proceeds to a women's entrepreneurship fund. I named the building the Morrison Center after my maiden name. Marcus saw the dedication plaque when he drove past. According to Nathan, who called to negotiate yet another deal, Marcus nearly had a stroke. I don't hate the Wellingtons anymore. I don't think about them much at all. They're simply people who taught me what I didn't want to become: bitter, insecure, dependent on putting others down to feel superior. My firm now manages over $500 million. Michael and I got engaged last month. We're planning a small wedding, just people who truly matter, who celebrate success rather than resent it. Sometimes I think about that Christmas Eve dinner. The wine dripping down my face. The laughter. The humiliation. And I smile, because that moment was the beginning of everything good in my life now. Have you ever had a moment where someone's disrespect pushed you toward something better? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more real stories about ordinary people finding extraordinary strength. Remember, sometimes the people who treat you worse teach you the best lessons about who you are and what you truly deserve. Until next time, stay strong.